Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. We're so grateful that you're here to join us. As most of you already know, Relational Life Therapy is uniquely suited to support LGBTQ plus care because it names power, teaching accountability without shame, and holds fierce truth together with radical love. In today's community conversation, we will queer the grid, exploring how RLT can be adapted beyond barriers into a more fluid, inclusive, and relationally honest practice. My name is Amber Cordoba, and I'm the Executive Director of Relational Life Foundation. For those of you that aren't familiar with our foundation, Relational Life Foundation, or we call it RLF for short, we're a nonprofit foundation that's a sister organization to Relational Life Institute with a mission to make relational skills accessible to everyone through programs, workshops, and experiences grounded in relational life therapy so that cost, culture, or circumstance never stands in the way of relational healing. And we envision a world that knows how to love well, rooted in relational health and collective repair, excuse me. We have a variety of programs that further our mission, such as these community conversations that we offer free out into the community. We also provide sliding scale therapy, practitioner scholarships, in-person programming, and our research work that is working towards RLT as an evidence-based practice. And we also have a new membership program that we've launched, as well as affinity groups, and those are meant to create community for RLT practitioners. So if you're interested in supporting our work, we'll make sure to put the link in the chat for all of those. Just a little bit of housekeeping for everybody. This is a question that always comes up. This event will be recorded. We will be having a Q&A at this section, a whole Q&A section at the end. So if you do want to come on and ask questions, we'll allow you to share your audio and video. Please just be aware that this recording will be available to the public. So make sure you're only disclosing information that you'd be comfortable sharing to a wide audience, because again, this will be recorded. Again, we will send out a copy of both the recording for you to rewatch and also a copy of the slides and the contact information of the presenters as well. This community conversation is designed for education and connection. So we want to make sure that we point that out. This is not therapy and it's not intended to replace any medical or mental health care. Participation here does not create a therapeutic relationship. If you are looking for individualized support, we encourage you to seek guidance from a licensed professional, and we do have our sliding scale program with RLT practitioners available to support. So Kim and Kayla are also on this call. If you don't know them, they're two of our fantastic staff members. They will be helping out today with technical support. If you do have any questions or any technical needs that come up, then feel free to reach out to Kayla. If you have any questions during the presentation, you can feel free to put those in the chat. We'll be answering questions both through the chat, but we'll also save questions for the end when we go into that Q&A session. So feel free to put those in the chat, and we'll be happy to make sure we get those answered for you. We also ask that you make sure you keep yourself muted. I don't think anybody can actually come off mute, but we'll keep you muted and keep your videos off until we go into Q&A, and then we'd be happy to see your beautiful faces. And with that, I think we are ready to get started. So I would really love to introduce our host for today, Julio Cezar Dantas. He's the host, and he is an RLT and ontological coach who spent 30 years working as a global human rights advocate, amazing, who led and scaled programs for children, family, and youth around the world. Specific to this webinar, he founded Todo Mejora, an organization in Chile to prevent adolescent suicide, as well as school and family violence based on discrimination for being or appearing to be LGBTQ. So I will hand it over to Julio. Thank you all so much for joining us today and for this fantastic group of panelists and this really lovely conversation that we're going to have.
Thank you so much, Amber, and thank you, the Relational Life Foundation. Welcome, everybody, and thanks for being here. Since Amber introduced me, I'm going to go ahead and jump over to Lisa and let her introduce herself before Martin.
Yes, thank you so much, Julio. I am Lisa Rivers, a Relational Life certified therapist, as well as boot camp facilitator. Presented at the 2025 RLT conference and really enjoyed it. I hope all of you will be able to attend the 2026 conference. I also hold positions as an educator and mentor to graduate and postgraduate LMFT, soon to be therapist, and that is such rewarding work. And I'm located in the Carolinas, North Carolina and South Carolina, and I use she, they pronouns.
Thank you.
Martin?
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Julio. So my name is Martin. As you can tell probably immediately by the accent, I'm based in Germany. I am from Germany. I'm an RLT coach, so I am certified through the coaching track of the Institute, RLT Institute. And I'm also a family lawyer, attorney at law here in Germany. So I do anything from moving people together to separating them as well through divorces. We do prenups as well, prenuptial agreements, and we do, of course, the whole divorce proceedings, the whole custody cases, everything. So that's my background, just very briefly. Thank you.
Thank you. So we wanted to thank again the foundation for having this conversation. I think it's a conversation that's really important, particularly in the context of, I'll call it global policies that are current today. And I think it's really relevant, particularly as we are responding to the needs of our clients. So today what we're going to do is we're going to explore LGBTQ plus experiences through our relational life therapy lens. We're going to present for about 35 minutes and then open up for Q&A and reflections. Martin is going to speak with a broader lens on the fluidity of sexuality, gender, and love in LGBT communities, plural. And then Lisa is going to focus on RLT tenets, how it interlaces with LGBT experiences, and how as practitioners, we can co-create with our clients. That's going to be sort of the main focus of the first part. And as we begin, I'd like to invite everyone here to have a particular posture, one of curiosity, humility, and learning. Many present are probably familiar with clinical literature that focuses on the challenges that LGBTQ plus communities face, and they're very real. So growing up and being LGBTQ means navigating two realities at once. Years of scanning rooms before you speak, families that go quiet, the grief of being unchosen, and carrying the legacy of generations who suffered and died while much of the world looked away. Coming out can cost family, faith, housing, safety, and belonging. And many LGBTQ people have experienced rejection, invisibility, discrimination, violence, and profound loneliness. So the impact of minority stress on individuals, couples, families, and communities can't be overstated. None of this should be minimized. These experiences are not isolated incidents either. They're part of a shared history and for many, a shared culture of surviving, but at the same time, thriving. As practitioners, informing ourselves about these realities can profoundly shape how we approach our work, whether we're sitting with a client in South Carolina, Chile, Germany, or the Middle East. Understanding LGBTQ plus specific experiences is essential to providing effective relational support. The next slide, Kayla.
Thank you, Julio. It's with a heavy heart that I listen to that. And also, the shadow is only half the story. The very conditions that wound many LGBTQ people also forge extraordinary capacities for resilience and relational living. When faced with rejection, many learned to build healthy self-esteem from within. When faced with abandonment, many co-created families and communities of belonging. When faced with fear, many transformed personal pain into collective strength. These are not consolation prizes. They are advanced relational skills, the very capacity many of our clients spend years in therapy trying to develop. Thank you. Next slide.
Okay, so as Julio was saying, I'm going to provide a bit of a groundwork here. I saw that quite a few people are familiar with LGBTQ plus topics. So that's great, but still it's good to remind ourselves of the awesome space that is being opened up. So Kate Bornstein quote, no presentation without Kate Bornstein. I'm a bi man myself. So Kate is the specialist on all things bi. And moving beyond the binary system. So this quote is a very short quote. There's so much in it. Endless possibilities, which is also what RLT is about. Moving people, empowering people, moving them into their own way of being and relating. And what I want to point out here is that it's a beginningless continuum. That means we don't start now, or we haven't started 100 years ago. This has been going on forever and ever. Queer people have been around forever. What we see changing is how society responds and what kind of role or roles these communities and people have in society. So this quote, you can Google Kate Bornstein if you don't know her. You'll find loads of information. I don't want to go into that too much. So we can go on the next slide. And see also, you will be familiar, most people, with the Kinsey scale, which was a revolution moving beyond the binary system of either hetero or homosexual, and that's it. So we have now a scale. We can move from one side to the other or back. Maybe it's dynamic, we don't know. For some people it is. It's also just a model. This is so super important that it may help some clients, but there's also people who live outside the scale or in between the scale or have something completely different. So that's important, as anybody who works with the systems theory knows that the model is not the reality. So this is one way of looking at it, and it helped me tremendously, and I think it helps many therapists or coaches to think about what is possible and how we move on a spectrum rather than being fixed in fixed positions. So this is all about opening up our minds. The next slide, please. So here I would like to invite you to just feel these quotes on gender. So we're now moving away from sexuality, attraction, which was the Kinsey scale. We're looking now at gender, which is your felt experience of yourself. And as you read the quotes, you can see that they're really, really diverse and very, very individual. And for me, this is always a reminder to be curious with the people I sit with that are in my office, to ask and listen. How is it for you? These quotes, by the way, have been taken from a London-based authors, sorry. So I'm bringing in a bit of a European perspective here on purpose. I give you another minute just to feel the intensity of these quotes. Okay, now we can continue on the next slide. Again, European perspective, I'm holding the flag. This is Greece. The Greek came up with all these different names for different ways of love, of feeling connected. of choosing intimacy, which is what RLT tries to help people with, how to be intimate, how to be vulnerable, connected, committed. And it can show up in many different relationships and ways of relationship. And this is, in the LGBTQ plus community, this is very present. Whereas in so-called heteronormative thinking, we have either the relationship or friends. And it's very binary again. So it kind of cuts out all the possibilities that we have in between. And I think it's really helpful to also have these names or kind of this model to see what we have with different people. And again, to be aware that this may shift. Even in a so-called romantic relationship, it may shift from, being maybe sexually focused to being more friendly focused, and maybe that's not a problem. So all this is to invite us into imagining new ways of being together. And therefore setting yourself free and setting the people you work with free and the people you meet, basically, us, everybody. Okay. So with this in mind, I would like to hand it over to Lisa and talk a bit more RLT focused.
Lisa, over to you.
Thank you, Julio. Martin, I just wanted to thank you for bringing attention to expanding our views on gender, sexuality, love. What a beautiful invitation. So thank you. This next portion of our presentation, we're going to be looking at what we can learn from the LGBTQ plus community as we look at them towards them as a profound blueprint for relational health. We're going to hold both the shadow and the light as we explore 5 ways the LGBTQ plus experience can embody the practice of relational living. First, authenticity. Second, intentional community. Third, collective resilience. Fourth, functional discernment. And lastly, the conscious negotiation of power. We would like to note at this time, though, that this is not an exhausted mapping, right? The LGBTQ history is not only past events, it is advanced relational skill in action, and we encourage continuing to explore this topic even past today. Thank you. Next slide, please.
And speaking of shadows, coming out and being openly LGBTQ, as I said earlier, can cost family, faith, housing, and safety. So visibility isn't always triumph. In some places, it's lethal, and youth suicide risks spikes around it. One of the reasons that I created To Mejora in Chile is because Chile has the highest levels of teenage suicide in Latin America. So each of these challenges are real. Each happen in specific contexts, which should be explored and understood by the practitioner, by us. In many cases, these matters compound one another and narrow our clients' alternatives for support system and connection. So in these moments, many LGBTQ plus people, unfortunately, not all, find themselves so lost and disconnected, we or they are left with one alternative: to create, to survive.
And there comes the light, right? So again, each of these, we're going to be presenting the shadow and the light, and coming out requires a profound second birth, which is the moving of our adaptive child organized around survival to the wise adult organized around authenticity. So in RLT, we conceptualize the struggle with self-esteem as kind of a swing or a spectrum from toxic shame to grandiosity. LGBTQ plus people often know this terrain intimately, as coming out asks them to reject both extremes, to stand in the center of health, saying, I am worthy of love without abandoning myself. Wow, how powerful that is. I am worthy of love without abandoning myself. Coming out is an act of relational integrity, the ability to remain connected to ourselves, our own worth and value, while we question connection with others. Is it safe? Is it certain? Is it uncertain? The invitation here is, let's ask our LGBTQ plus clients what this journey, what this second birth has taught them about their own self-worth, trust their wisdom that they earned through this, and make room for their expertise rather than assuming our own. Next slide, please.
And continuing with the shadows, families of origin often fail LGBTQ plus people in big. They get kicked out of the house or microwaves, never asking about one's personal life. So in the grief of being unchosen by your own blood or being vulnerable due to lack of protection, many of us arrive at loneliness too soon in life. And as the door of blood family shuts, we find ourselves sharing common stories of abandonment and in the same breath, connecting, understanding, and valuing each other.
In the light, RLT teaches us that healthy relationships are built on intentionality, boundaries, reciprocity, repair, not simply love, right? So chosen families embody these principles because they can't rely on that blood obligation. It survives, the relationship survives because people continue choosing one another while negotiating and co-creating the relationship together. Without a default script, chosen family requires wise adult skills, balancing autonomy with connection, vulnerability with strength, caring for ourselves and caring for others. So the invitation here is, let's ask what these intentionally built networks have taught our LGBTQ plus clients about relationships, while expanding our own understanding of family beyond traditional definitions. That invitation is very similar to Martin's earlier of there's so much here. It's not binary. There's so many family definitions that exist, and an invitation to really understand and expand our own definitions. Next slide, please.
So the AIDS epidemic, as many may know, resulted in an entire generation dying in the public eye while abandoned by governments, medicine, and families. So the fall and rise of the anti-LGBTQ plus sentiment, policies, and enforcements has meant growing up, living with a thick skin of resilience. People became warriors because no one came to save them. That's abandonment. And at the same time, we saw ourselves depicted in media as folks who would die alone, we also stood next to one another in the streets demonstrating and feeling connected, understood, and seen. That's relational.
So the light, the LGBTQ plus community carries a long history of transforming exclusion into collective resilience. Movements like ACT UP and Denver Principles turned grief into action and demanded a voice in systems that had ignored them. If you're not familiar with ACT UP or Denver Principles, I encourage you to look that up. In relational life language, they move beyond both toxic shame and grandiosity into empowered action. This is a blueprint for transforming suffering into connection, voice, and vitality. The invitation here, let's honor the resilience our clients inherit from their communities and trust the wisdom that emerges from lived experience. These were really two very powerful organizations and movements that have created lasting impact in our culture as a whole here in the United States. it transformed the ways in which healthcare viewed the patient, and systemically made enormous changes and enormous positive impacts in our community. Next slide, please.
In continuing with the shadow, RLT practitioners know that a wall that saved your life at 15 can destroy intimacy at 40. And it doesn't come down on command. As LGBTQ plus people, we had to chronically scan for danger, and our nervous system has always paid the bill. So when you see avoidance, isolation, and distrust in your patients, it's real, but it's not always the whole story.
Yeah, the other side of that story is where the light sits, right? RLT teaches that healthy boundaries are not walls. They are flexible acts of wise adult discernment. So how beautiful it is to think of our clients as individuals who have been practicing flexibility in their wise adult discernment. Many LGBTQ plus people develop sophisticated boundary skill out of necessity. They learn how to filter minority stress, protect themselves from harm, contain understandable anger, and identify safer spaces for vulnerabilities. So we're talking about protection, connection, containment, all of the areas of boundary work that RLT works with. Our role is often not to teach boundaries from scratch, but to help LGBTQ plus clients refine the strengths that they've already developed. So the invitation here is, let's stop pathologizing caution and instead recognize the intelligence and survival wisdom behind it. Next slide, please.
So no script also means no map and no elders. So negotiating power under stress and uncertainty. Queer relationships are not immune to abuse. Intimate partner violence exists, and it's often disbelieved precisely because of the egalitarian myth. Internalized homophobia and patriarchy don't vanish. In many cases, they get reenacted inside relationships.
One of the things I think is so unique about RLT is its willingness to address power directly, and its invitation to power with. Queer couples they're often navigating relationships without traditional gender scripts. That freedom can create uncertainty, but it also creates opportunities for conscious negotiation around labor, money, intimacy, and decision-making. Many LGBTQ plus couples have already spent years questioning assumptions that others simply inherit. Our role is not to teach them equity, but to help them recognize and strengthen the equity they are already trying to build. So the invitation here is, let's trust our clients' lived experience in navigating power and support them in creating relationships that reflect their deepest values. Next slide, please. When we recognize LGBTQ plus lived history as relational blueprints, we stop viewing them primarily through the lens of minority stress and begin seeing them as a source of relational wisdom. The clinical invitation here is simple: flip the lens. Your next LGBTQ plus client may not be a case study in suffering. They may be a master class in authenticity, community, resilience, boundaries, and power. I want to state that again. They may be a master class in authenticity, community, resilience, boundaries, and power. So this idea that it's sitting within them, the wisdom is already there. Our task is not to occupy the expert seat. It's to join them in a power with relationship, honor the brilliance of their adaptations, and and help refine the skills that they've already worked so hard to develop. In many ways, they have been practicing the very principles of relational living that the rest of the world is still learning. Next slide, please.
So as we close and before we move into questions, I'd like to leave us with a final thought, and also let you know that one of the reasons that we did this presentation in this way, sort of tightly, is so that you can use this part of the presentation for your own means, to educate others, to share with other practitioners. To close, I wanted to say that today we've explored both the shadow and the light of LGBT experiences. We talked about the losses, the exclusion, the relational injuries that many people carry, and also the remarkable resilience, creativity, and relational wisdom that emerge in response. So as RLT practitioners, we are trained to look for adaptation, survival strategies, and opportunities for growth. And we hope what you take away from today is that LGBTQ plus clients are not only people who have been impacted by minority stress, they're also people who have often spent a lifetime developing the very capacities we seek to cultivate in our clients. As Lisa said, authenticity, courage, community, boundaries, resilience, and the ability to create connection in difficult circumstances. So we, the three of us, have been transformed by the creativity and strength of our LGBTQ plus clients to survive and thrive and use their relational outlooks and skills to help other clients. We hope you see the possibilities of doing the same. Thank you for spending time with us, and we would love to hear your reflections, questions, and experiences.
Thank you, Colleen.
If we have questions, you can raise your hand. I've also enabled it so that you are able to put your video on. So anybody that wants to show your beautiful face, you can now put your video on and you should be able to come off mute. So I'm sure we have lots of questions and it's always hard to be the first person that asks, but do we have anybody who has a question to start with? And I didn't see actually anything in the chat, but
Yes, we have a couple of people. Hello, Tamsin. Welcome.
there we go. All right, Tamsin, if you would like to come off mute and ask your question, we would love that. Oh, you're still on mute.
There we go.
There we are.
Sorry, that was just a little tricky on my end. Thank you so much for this presentation. I love that, the whole perspective. I'm kind of curious for each of you, as you've used RLT in your own practices, what aspects you've been leaning on as you come into the room with RLT clients. I got it from your presentation, sort of we're following their lead and just the reverence for how well these clients do already in sort of living relational lives. And I'm just curious, as you come into practice, as they come into the room, sort of what you find yourself turning to again and again as you work with these clients.
Thank you for that. Go
Please.
ahead, Neil.
So I'll be simple. I think that the big picture that we did actually is what I find myself going to, which is shadow and light. I think oftentimes the idea that folks will come in and see their experience as something hard, negative, hurtful, and that's real. And then there's also a flip side to that I find with clients where by exploring, we'll often find how those same things in perhaps other contexts, they found strength. They found a way to be authentic, and they found a way to really overcome the difficulties that they may be having. And that is often about switching places, right? So if this worked in this context, what about how would you see it in that other context? Be it at work or with family or with the social life.
Yeah, beautiful, Julio. Tamsin, thank you so much for that question. I would ditto what Julio shared, and then I would add for me that the story I tell myself is LGBTQ plus clients are uniquely and deeply experienced being invisible and unvoiced and disempowered. And when they come and sit with me, we are often exploring in what ways relationally are they experiencing that now? And what do they need to feel voiced, visible, and empowered? And then I'd say one other layer is that safety. We're often asking ourselves when we're triggered, when we're whooshed, as Terry would say, we often talk about the nervous system not feeling safe. And again, LGBTQ plus clients' nervous system is used to not feeling safe. And in their relationships, oftentimes there is safety. And so I don't assume that there's safety, but I'm looking to highlight if there is safety. I'm asking them, what's their body telling them? And then how are they experiencing the lack of safety or safety in their relationship? And then how can they also challenge that? Am I safe? In what ways am I safe? If I'm not safe, in what ways what do I need to feel safe in this relationship or relationships? I'll hand that to you, Martin.
Yeah, maybe one aspect that I'm trying to balance is to see if the queerness, if it's an obvious queerness of the couple, is relevant in the session, to find that out. And at the same time, not to have an automatic focus on it. Yeah. So not to be like, okay, wow, this is now, I have to look at the queerness because it's so predominantly in the room. And this is a balance, né? To be open to it, curious about it. How is this couple living it or experiencing it, and what's the history? And also maybe it's not important for them right now, to be aware of that also, so that I don't put my stuff on them in the session. So and that's a bit of a balance, I would think, to be curious, but also not push it away. And that's a bit of an art, I would think. Something maybe you need to get a feeling by doing it, and see how everybody responds who is in the room and feels comfortable with you also.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sharon, would you like to come on and ask your question?
Sure. Thanks. I so appreciate all of this. It's beautiful. Thank you. And I can't help think about how all of this applies to every single client that we see, every couple we see. And I work with Indigenous people, and I wonder if you have anything to say about, might be a whole separate topic, but how a culture that has been in existence for 10,000 years and still continues to exist outside of the dominant culture also brings some of these exact same issues, and a certain network of support that they didn't have to earn in the same way, but certainly have to pay dearly for every day. So I'm so grateful that you're bringing this whole conversation up, and I hope there's more intersectionality that comes from the conversation.
I can jump in, or does anybody want to go? Okay, I'm very daring in my jump and jumping in. So Sharon, I don't have experience with Native American particularly, but I would speak of sort of other, I would speak of other races, ethnicity, and I would even say people who may not be out about something that's critically personal to their identity. I find that a lot of the ways in which I've worked with LGBTQ plus clients allows me to have conversations with those folks. It may be somebody who has a partner that's not of the same race and they're afraid to tell their parents about it. It may be somebody that has been diagnosed with a disease and is afraid to tell their friends about it. There's a whole piece there that I think Lisa really hit upon as we were discussing, as we were presenting, of how do I balance out safety and authenticity, and how do I identify the protective surroundings where I can show little bits and pieces of myself and start building my muscle of protection. So if I find that first person that hears me, okay, now we're two. Okay, these two people find a third one, and suddenly I find myself with a community or 3 or 4 friends who see me for the authentic me, and that builds my muscle to be able to go in front of family and others and be out.
Beautiful, yeah. Thank you.
Martin, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it connects to that really. I think so. So what came up for me is to see what Terry always says also to everybody is we're swimming in this patriarchy. So even though queer people have developed various muscles and ways and inventions and things to deal with all kinds of situations, we are all in this patriarchal framework, and that applies oftentimes to how to say Native Americans or people from tribes, because they're also in the now they are in patriarchy and they're not separate from it. Now, I myself, I've lived in India for many years, and there's a third gender community there that is very strong and very close, very tight, and very powerful. But they also have this patriarchal thinking within them, and it's very strong in a way that they defend themselves, but it's also walled off, I would say, from my perspective now, not being an expert on it. So to keep that in mind, that even though we have these competences that Lisa and Julio have talked about, there's also the limitations that we're all in this system and we're all trying to work through it. And I think that's good to keep in mind, so we don't expect like wonders from people on the margins.
Yeah, Sharon, what a beautiful word, intersectionality. That is one of my favorite words because we are such layered people. As human beings, we have so many identities and they are ever changing and ever growing. And how do those intersect, and how do the ways in which we feel invisible and unvoiced intersect? And there are just so many layers there. The other thing I think that comes up in me is this, for me, is really where RLT shines in the adaptive child gratitude that exists, that we are so grateful to our adaptive parts that create this resiliency. And if there is this long history of that resiliency, having such gratitude to that historical resilience as well as present resilience, and asking those adaptive parts to take their sticky hands off the wheel and let us, from our wise adult self, drive the bus, as Terry would say. So yeah, I truly believe, Sharon, you're pointing out why RLT is so equipped to, I almost said treat, to meet people in their intersectionality and in the ways that they feel invisible and unvoiced, and how that shows up in relationships and to ourselves through our adaptive parts and our wise adult parts, and in our relationships, and when we become grandiose or we go into toxic shame or become boundaryless. So yeah, thank you for bringing that to the conversation today.
I'm
Thank you.
gonna build on what Lisa's saying, because somebody made the comment to me here. It says, Julio, can you repeat what you said about walled-off behavior impacting intimacy in our 40s? Yeah, so the comment was the walled-off behavior when we're 15 may have served us as our adaptive child in that moment, but it doesn't necessarily serve us in our 40s when we're trying to build intimacy with our partners. That's what I was referring to.
Yeah, a prime example of what I was just speaking about. Or 50s, I like that.
Indeed.
There's one other
Christine.
note in the chat that I just
Awesome.
wanted to share. Juan Pablo says that the way that LGBTQ families need to recreate the traditional concepts of family is a very interesting tool to use with other groups. So just to expand on what you were already talking
Yes,
about there.
that comment just caught my eye as well. I would like to underline that. I think it's interesting to see how we have in the sex therapy, we have a lot of concepts that have been developed in marginalized communities. A lot of what's going on in BDSM has been, and the leather movement and the latex community. This is a lot of it comes out of LGBTQ plus communities, comes out of the gay communities very strong. If you know Tom of Finland, for example, it's very the uniform thing, and it's now very present in sex therapy to play with these and open up your sexuality and play with these concepts. And I sometimes think that it might be possible that this will happen in relationships in general as well. That these concepts, what Juan Pablo is saying, that these concepts that are being developed in the way of relating is not translating and becoming into mainstream, just like in sex therapy, it almost becomes normal, but maybe it's now only my lens. Now, to be spanked sometimes is almost a normal thing to do. And so this is the invitation also to bring these concepts that seem alien to the mainstream culture. And I think it will become more and more normal to work like that. So thanks for that comment. Thank you.
May I build on that real quick? Martin, you mentioned the BDSM culture, kink culture. One of the things that I think is really remarkable in my work with individuals in the culture is that there are boundaries and this co-creating of the relationship, and the boundaries of the relationship, and the values of the relationship, and it's very intentional, as you were saying, Martin. It is very much like creating that chosen family, that you are consistently choosing one another, and you're consistently co-creating and agreeing to a relationship in all of its ways that it shows up. So yeah, beautiful.
If I may, I think for me, where that work or that concept comes up, and I'm not a specialist in family systems, but it kind of really challenges some of the family systems work that folks do, because so many of those systems are based on more traditional family or blood families, let's say. And I think where I found it to be quite useful in the work is that clients oftentimes are are excusing many of the behaviors of blood family because they're blood family. And when I'm able to show them, but what's happening with your chosen family? What behaviors are happening there? Would you allow those behaviors to occur? The violent behaviors? No, absolutely not. It's like, well, then why are you allowing your blood family to treat you this way? Right. So I think it really kind of allows us as well to challenge our clients, not in a negative way, but in a, let's see the reality of what's happening in your life now. You don't have to accept this treatment just because this happens to be your brother. There's a way in which you can also connect with your value and your truth, and and how you see how that relationship needs to go, and challenge that older brother, for example, who may be treating you badly. So that's how I've played with it, and it's served many clients in particularly traditional Latin families in my case.
Thank you for that. Christine, would you like to come off mute?
Yes, thank you. So, first of all, thank you for this very powerful presentation. I've been writing down so much and learning. And I wanted to ask, and maybe even particularly Martin and Julio, those points that you just made, I can see how RLT is an excellent modality for treatment, but I'm also wondering if you feel like the same grids and worksheets and assessment materials that we have, are they enough, or do we need something more innovative for the population?
Martin, you want to go first, or you want me to?
Well, you go first, right? I think.
Yeah. So my husband would really throw something at me about this, and like a soft thing. No, the answer is no. And he would say, but why is it not enough? Is it never enough? So I deeply believe in human development. And I entered the RLT world a couple of years ago when I think the diversity or the DEI report had come out. And I think that the diversity, equity, and inclusion report, I think, really helped shift in some ways some of the great work that RLT was already doing, right? The addition of the 8th lens, I think that's a really amazing example, but also the expansion of that, right? I mean, I think having this community conversation today and other conversations that I've been able to be witness and part of in the last couple of years in RLT shows us that the tools that are there are great in, let's say, in their essence, as pillars of how we can begin conversations and understand systems. But they need to be, I don't know if the word is adapted, and I don't have a word for it, or shifted a little bit, because they don't always fit, right? So I think Lisa in the presentation was talking about families, right? So, or no, actually, I did that part where we were saying LGBT couples sometimes replicate traditional families, right? So you've got like 2 gay men who have 2 kids, who have 2.5 kids, and they live in some suburb area, etc. Right? So then you're saying, okay, how do I then have this conversation with this human using these lens when they're actually replicating the thing that patriarchy is trying to end? So that's where I think it's not yet there, but I'm not sure it'll ever be there. But I think it's us. And I remember Terry saying this. Where's Tamsin? Somewhere here, right? So Tamsin asked a few questions of Terry once that had to do with Native communities. And then I asked some questions to Terry that had to do with LGBT communities. And then these were 2 different webinars. And Terry answered us in the same way. Yeah. And this is what he said. He said, I am so glad that you're in this community. People like you are the ones that need to challenge us and help us construct a new way of applying RLT. So I would say that's my answer, Christine. That's the best I could do.
Yeah, I think that absolutely goes in the right direction. I mean, these concepts, I mean, we're talking RLT. RLT is not old in itself. Yeah? I mean, it's still pretty new, and it has changed within the last 3-4 years, and very dramatically already. And so it will continue with all of us who are here, and all of us in the coach and therapist track, and whoever is part of this community will, of course, add to it. And I think the tools are pretty good already. It's not like they're deficient or no, they really don't work in many cases or so. It's generally that they're pretty good base. And then what we're doing today, which maybe is a start, and it will continue to open all these lenses up a little more. And if you look at Terry's webinars from 5, 6, 7 years back, they were different than they are now. There's a huge change, and it's not just adding pronouns, it's more than that.
Quick
So, yeah,
interjection.
so thank you, Christine. Yeah.
Maybe before Lisa
Mm-hmm.
goes, Martin, would you mind talking a little bit about the LGBTQ plus affinity group that you lead for any of the practitioners on the call today that might be interested in joining or learning a little bit more about that?
Yes, of course. You go to the affinity page and you'll find it. You'll sign up, you get an invitation. We'll meet about maybe every second month with various participation. It's usually 4 to 10 people. It varies strongly, depending on how people's time schedule is happening. And we talk on anything, personal experience or professional or cases or what we're doing now. Is the grid good enough? Do we need to change the grid? Do you have an idea what to do differently? So it's a very open space. And this webinar that we're doing right now has come out of this space, and we want to do more. So please, if you feel called, please join. It will be fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Amber.
Yes, on that, Amber, Christine, I think I'm going to comment on what you asked, but also build on what you're saying, Amber. So many of us who are Spanish speakers, and Spanish is, I think, the second language that's most spoken in the world, find that sometimes translating these US American terms is very, very difficult, both in literal translation, like word per word, but also sort of conceptually. So there's also another affinity group that is the Spanish-speaking affinity group. So what we try to do there is similar to what Martin's saying in the LGBT group, is say, here's RLT, how does this language really translate into the different Spanish-speaking worlds, because there are 26 countries in Latin America, plus Spain, etc. How does it translate? But then the other is, if there's something about the concept that just needs to be cleaned up a little bit so that it translates now conceptually into our cultures, we're doing that as well. And so that's another group that exists within the RLT community.
Thank you.
Kristen, I was not planning on plugging myself, but it is listed in the resources. But I actually did take the grid and RLT and adapt it and have a workbook on my website that I want to, say both what Martin and Julio said as far as it is enough, and adapting, making changes to really serve your clients is encouraged. And that's exactly what I did in that workbook that's available for sale on my website. So.
Great. Christine. You're Lisa's resource.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Julio.
I think Colleen has a question. Oh, I'm sorry. The question is it a prereq for affinity groups that we've completed any of the RLT trainings? I think that as long as you are a practitioner, that you can participate, even if you've started training, or just know that it is going to have an RLT focus, but really it's to build community and continue to provide support to one another. I think that's the purpose of the affinity groups underneath different, identities.
So for everyone, at the end of Amber, I think you will say this, but at the end of today's conversation, we will share our contact information in this chat box so that you can access all of us as quickly as you want. And then I also wanted to, you've asked questions, but we would love to also hear any reflections, or if there's a specific situation where you're facing a challenge, please use us while we're here. So you don't just have to ask questions.
Any takers? I did put all of the contact information in the chat for all three of our panelists today as well, and then those will also go out via email from the foundation in the next day or two. So you'll be able to connect with them individually. And as I mentioned, we recorded this whole entire session, including the Q&A, and we'll also send out a copy of the slides so that you have all those resources.
Yeah, I would like to also point out that there's a literature list on the slides, and really take a look. I also put a novel on there, which is super good. So it's not just therapeutic literature. And I made a point to put a German book. So for the German community, have a look. And anybody who wants to learn German. And it's about queer community, the history of the queer community in Germany. So I think it's super interesting. I just want to.
Yeah, we can go ahead and
out.
actually share those slides. Yeah, if you go to the next slide. Yeah, Lisa, if you want to talk a little bit about what's up on the screen here, these resources.
Yeah, thank you. So the one is the digital workbook that I was mentioning to Christine there that you can use with your clients, and clients can use on their own should they desire. And it is an adaptation of RLT concepts to use with the LGBTQ plus community. And then Porch Light is a wonderful peer support group for queer and transgender individuals that kind of maybe it's a great sliding scale resource. It really, what's the word I'm looking for? Bridges the gap between financial, coaches and therapists who are, at higher rates. It offers, so for example, if a client can only see their therapist or their coach once a month due to finances, this is a really great additional support that could be there and bridge that gap between those month appointments. So I highly recommend you checking out and referring clients to Porch Light. Martin, you want to speak to the further reading?
Yeah, I can say a few words. And now we're missing here the authors. First of all, that has been changed that slide, but doesn't matter. If you bring it, all these titles, you can just Google them and you'll find the actual book to all of them. They're pretty European focused, most of them, which I think is maybe interesting because we're so much on North America here with RLT and RLF, understandably. I'm not saying that's no good, but yeah, I think it's nice to have a different lens. Having Spent Life Seeking is the novel, so really check it out. Fantastic book, super great literature, great story, based in London. Have fun with it. Not based in London, but in the UK. Yeah.
And so I think what I want to say about this list is the first one is the foundation that we created here in Chile, but the other four are US based. And the reason that I chose them is because when we created the foundation 15 years ago, and I think it's still the case today, unfortunately, oftentimes, depending on the country that you're in, referring clients, and I'm speaking in this case specifically about youth and children and sometimes families, to I'll call it traditional places, government services, etc., can often be a place where they are recriminated or discriminated against again. So what I like about these four US places is that they give examples of the kind of services that I think are necessary in a lot of countries that don't have them. And they oftentimes provide a place for young people to speak to someone. Todo Mejora, which is on top, we helped create about 6 or 7 different ones in Latin America. So those have a specific place for youth and families to call. And again, it's focused on prevention of suicide, mental health, and prevention of bullying. Yeah, so that's what I have to say about that. Looking. I love it. Thank you for the Trevor Project is looking for a chief people officer, if anyone's interested.
Well, if anybody wants to reach out to any of our amazing panelists today, again, the information is here on how to reach out. They're all interested in fielding any questions or expanding the conversation. Again, we also have the affinity group. We would be happy to have you all join there. And we would love it for you all to keep in contact with us at the foundation as well. If you want to go to the next slide, Kayla. You can connect with us. We have a really active Instagram where we share a lot of practitioner videos. We also spotlight some of our scholarship recipients, which is a great way to get introduced to new RLT practitioners from all over the world. We also share a lot of fun facts. You can sign up for our newsletter if you're not already signed up, but I imagine if you are on this webinar that you are already a member of our newsletter. Also wanted to say, and I didn't say in the beginning, Happy Pride Month. We specifically chose to do this community conversation in June to honor Pride Month. So happy Pride. I took a lot away from this. I am not a practitioner myself, but I think this is really just valuable information as I'm interacting with others in my day-to-day, and really valuable. So thank you for all of the time that you put into the presentation. I'd also like to share, we have some relational skills boot camps coming up. I know Lisa is a boot camp facilitator. We have one coming up September 12th and 13th. That's virtual, and these are the 2-day RLT boot camps. There's also one in person October 17th and 18th. We work with boot camp facilitators across the world to provide sliding scale resources for those who need financial assistance. So the boot camps are available not only to the general public at a sliding scale rate, but also to any practitioners. And I believe that the boot camp is a prerequisite if you're interested in becoming a facilitator yourself. So these are opportunities, and we always have new events coming up on our website all the time. We also have another program called Relational Wisdom. This is level 1. It's 3 Sundays in July and 1 Sundays in August, starting July 12th. And I believe that they're about 2 hours and they're all virtual. So it's kind of a cohort type program. And we have 2 lovely facilitators that have done the relational wisdom a couple times for us. So if you're interested, you can sign up there. We have sliding scale available for that as well. And then we do have a sliding scale program for anybody that's not aware of that. So there's a dual purpose to this. One is to support practitioners in training. So if you're in your certification process and you're looking for clients, A, to practice with, and B, to record, we provide this program for you to get connected with clients. And then it also offers the opportunity for individuals that might not otherwise be able to afford working with an RLT therapist or coach, the ability to do that with sliding scale. And we do have a lot of practitioners that will complete their certification and that will continue to donate their time as a part of this program to make it accessible to those around the world that have that financial limitation. If you would like to, you can sign up there. We'll also make sure that we provide the link in the chat as well. Just so you know how it works, is we ask practitioners to provide 5 sessions to the foundation pro bono, and then again, we match you up with clients that either pay $33.50 or $125 per session. So we try to make it as accessible as possible, and that goes to the foundation and helps us support the work that we do in all of the matching and the coordination there. We've also launched new payment plans this year, and that's really helped for individuals that aren't able to pay up front. And then we'd love for you to explore our new membership program. So this is separate from the Relational Life Institute Real Life, which some of you may be a part of. We've created a membership and we're creating a membership community that's really about supporting all of our practitioners and giving you a place to come together, not necessarily like the affinity groups where you have a specific identity that you're focused on, but how do we hold you while you're holding others? So it's really a way for you to stay connected, informed, and invested in relational healing. And I think the next slide is some of the benefits. So if you're US based, you get one of these awesome little You Meet Us mugs that we have this year. And then we'll be starting our first monthly practitioner community building call is taking place next month. We provide recognition on our website for members as a part of our annual report as well. We will have an annual virtual salon with Terry. So we'll bring Terry on and it'll be a more intimate format where you can get to know him and ask him questions outside of the academic format of learning. We also provide a quarterly behind the scenes magazines where we talk about some of the fun stuff that we have going on, or maybe we'll find some bloopers to share, but to really give you more relational insight to what's going on in the foundation. And then we also have different foundation committees. And as we talk about things like modifying the grid or specifically making adaptations for particular groups or cultures, there's great opportunity to join committees to really talk about that and make recommendations to the Institute to even implement new types of, to implement those recommendations into the certification process. And then with that, I think that's everything that I have. I will just say thank you so much. I think this was such a beautiful and valuable conversation, and I'm sure that we are going to get so many wonderful replays of this. But I'd like to pass it back over. Julio, I don't know if you all want to kind of say a last word, but I'll hand it back over. And again, thank you to our beautiful RLT community that shows up for us. And thank you to our panelists for just an amazing job today.
Mhm. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I think we would like to say some parting words. Martin or Lisa, do you want to go?
Lisa can go first if she wants.
I'll just say what an honor and privilege it is to sit with you all today in this discussion, to be beside Julio and Martin, and what a privilege I have in working with my clients, in being an RLT certified therapist. Just so happy and grateful for this opportunity today. So thank you.
Yeah, so I want also, of course, to thank everybody for their time that you spent with us. And I know that, I mean, presentation has been researched as well. And generally people take a single digit percentage of what has been said. And that's pretty normal. So if you hold on to one or two sentences and move that out of our community into your work, into your workplace, into your families, and into your social life, I think that would be fantastic, and that would be really great. And please get in touch and let us know how things go.
I really, really want to build on that. I think that one of the things I learned when we created the foundation here was that sometimes it's just a phrase that you picked up here or a concept, particularly this shadow and light concept of the resilience and so much that LGBTQ clients can provide for everyone in the room. And when we built the foundation, we realized that was a key thing that was saving lives, right? Because we were talking to children and young people who had never heard somebody say something non-negative about being LGBTQ plus. Right. So I think in the context that we are in, to have clients hear you say, tell me about your resilience and what that's meant to you and how that's made you a more powerful person today. I know you've told me about what hurts, but all I see is power. All I see is strength. Tell me more about that. There's something that happens in that moment about human dignity and human authenticity and human strength that I think is everything. So I agree with Martin and Lisa. Whatever you take from here, We hope you use it, and we know it's going to make a difference. And thank you.
Well, thank you all so much. I hope that you all have a blessed rest of your day. There's a note in the chat that if you're in Seattle, their Pride Parade's going to have about 300,000 people the last weekend in June. So if you feel like traveling to the Pacific Northwest, then you can join up in Seattle. So, well, thank you all again today. And again, really thank you for your time. We know everybody's busy and you have a lot going on, and you being part of this conversation is so meaningful. So thank you all so much, and we hope to see you again soon.
Ciao.
Thank you.